Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Daniel, and as you can see, I'm wearing a suit. This was Kim's idea. Don't blame me, and I'm sorry it looks a bit messy, but I was in a rush. Anyway, I'm going to be reading something that hasn't really got a title. I just call it Grubbins and Tamberwell. I wrote it a while ago and it's still unfinished. So I'll read the first few pages of it, see how you like it. Anyway, Mr. Grubbins was asleep, as usual. His great snoring hulk sloped half off the passenger seat of the van as it rocked about on the dirt trail up to the farm. His snoring infuriated Mr. Tamberwell, the thin, hook-nosed driver, who currently wore a grimace of disgust across his ugly face. "We're almost here, you great lump," he said suddenly, his piercing, grimy voice rising above the roar of the van's struggling engine. "So wake up. This is going to be a quick job." Grubbins gave a snort, rolling around on the seat and crushing Tamberwell's hand on the gear stick. The thin man gave a shout, swerving on the road slightly as he lost his concentration. "Oaf!" he shouted, batting Grubbins with his recovering hand. "You could have killed us!" Grubbins looked out of the window, bleary-eyed, oblivious to Tamberwell's shouts. It was a beautiful day, a rare cloudless view in this part of the country. As is probably paired with sleepers like Grubbins, the fat man was a daydreamer, which only served to annoy Tamberwell further. "Focus, Grubbins, focus, man!" he cried, almost slamming the wheel of the van in anger. As Grubbins finally turned to him, his baby-like face full of stupid innocence, the thin man calmed himself down, slicking his hair back in place with his finger. "We need to go over the plan," he said, staring at the road ahead. It was rocky, the lumbering blue van hardly an ideal vehicle for the surface. "The plan?" "The plan, man, the plan." "Oh, this is White Farm, remember? The Duck's place." Grubbins scratched his head and looked at his finger. Tamberwell felt like he should just slam his head on the dashboard. "The place where I go in and spray stuff?" "That's exactly the place, Grubbins. Well done." "Thank you," Grubbins said, smiling proudly. The van rolled up a couple of minutes later in front of the farm. It was, as the name suggested, white, but the place was looking shabby in parts. The barn behind the farmhouse was covered in what looked like dry mud right across its domed roof. Tamberwell sighed as he saw it. "This looks bad," he said to Grubbins, who clumsily fell out the passenger door. "A big infestation." "Does that mean we use the big one?" Grubbins asked earnestly, adjusting the bottom of his shirt to cover his huge stomach. Tamberwell nodded. "The big gun, Grubbins. The biggest one in the van." Grubbins giggled childishly as he headed off to the sliding door of the van, out of Tamberwell's view. The hook-nosed man, adjusting his jeans, instead headed off to the farmhouse door, taking out a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket. Rapping smartly on the door, he cleared his throat and adjusted his hair in the sight reflection of the glass. Tamberwell was not one for looking shabby during business, no matter how dirty the business may be. "Who's that?" a rough voice growled from behind the door. A chorus of barks followed, and a lot of bangs from inside. The door opened slowly, the chain still attached to the wall, and a beady eye looked out at Tamberwell. "Ah, that's who it is." The door opened fully, and Tamberwell presented the sheet to the man, trying to avoid the 5 leaping dogs around him. Remarkable, he thought, that the old, red-faced man had been able to stumble through life talking in a near incomprehensible manner. "You here for animals?" Yes, Mr. Waterhouse," Tamberwell said, hoping he'd understood the farmer right. "We're Tamberwell and Grubbins, and a licence from the Duck himself." Mr. Waterhouse nodded, looking grimly over Tamberwell's shoulder. "That's a big gun." Tamberwell turned and saw Grubbins heaving out a huge contraption from the van. "I've got it," the fat man huffed. "It's a bit heavy, mind." "Excellent, Grubbins," Tamberwell said, turning back to the farmer. "And where, Mr. Waterhouse, are the animals?" Mr. Waterhouse huffed, patting one of the dogs on the head. "Out back." Grubbins ended up dragging the contraption across a stony courtyard to the barn, which caused grimaces from Tamberwell. It was expensive equipment, not to mention extremely difficult to manufacture. He wouldn't tell the Duck, though. Despite Grubbins' annoyances, despite his almost unbelievable stupidity, Tamberwell couldn't let him get fired. He was a good worker and a decent shot when the time came. "Here we are." "Wow," Grubbins said, summing up the situation perfectly. Tamberwell turned to Mr. Waterhouse, disbelief across his face. "You managed to tether them all, Mr. Waterhouse?" "Isn't it all?" he said gruffly, scratching his head. The rest are in a field. In a field, Tamberwell said. But they'll be escaping any minute. Look at that, Grubbins said, pointing up at the sky. They're off. Woo, look at them go. Tamberwell looked up in distress at an image he'd been dreading for a long time. A full-scale escape. They were off. Grubbins, he roared. Man the sprayer. We've got a full job on our hands. Grubbins grabbed the contraption off the floor and started cranking a handle on its side. What do we do now, sir? Tamberwell started running for the van around the corner of the farmhouse. Spray them, man! Spray them! Grubbins grimaced as he let loose a cloud of green spray across the sky at the swarm. Closer, Grubbins! Get closer down the track! Yes! Closer! Grubbins cried, lugging the equipment past him in the van. Tamberwell, despite his frantic feelings, paused for a second to watch the scene. The duck would not be pleased. A full flying animal outbreak at the duck's own home farm. They couldn't escape. He clattered through masses of equipment before he found what he wanted. The handheld sprayer, light enough to carry with ease, yet powerful enough to hit an airborne animal at 50 feet easily. Grubbins! Tamberwell roared, sprinting after the lumbering man. The large Grubbins was a couple of 100 metres ahead of the sprightly man, yet once again his weight was letting him down. Tamberwell had frequently pressured Grubbins to do something about his fitness, but as the duck said in a disgusted way, it was Grubbins, and he always would be. Aye, sir, Grubbins said, his posture suggesting near collapse. How many are there, Grubbins? I counted 5, sir. 5? There's way more than that, man. I lost count, sir. Tamberwell refrained from shouting, instead starting after the animals. From this distance he could see the woolliness of the sheep easily, bleating crazily against the fading sun, and a couple of unsteady figures of cows. Zooming across the bovine landscape were a good dozen chickens, as well as the unfamiliar sight of pigs. Pigs flying! Tamberwell shouted in his best battle cry. The pigs are flying! He took a heroic jump and sprayed the green goo into the sky, striking a couple of chickens in the process. They gave a small squawk, either of protest or sheer relief at falling back to earth, but Tamberwell didn't care. The cow next. As he sprinted further down the fields, past the track they had driven up but 5 minutes before, he switched a dial on the spray around to its highest setting. The silhouette of the cow only confirmed his choice, and he smiled triumphantly as he aimed up at the half-distressed face of the bovine. The next few minutes were some of the most successful Tamberwell had ever experienced in his animal containment career. He had always imagined a mass escape to be something of almost apocalyptic trouble, but within the few minutes of overtaking Grubbins, he had sprayed all but one animal. All but one. Grubbins! Tamberwell cried, his voice starting to go hoarse. Grubbins, I'm out! I'm out of spray! He looked up towards White Farm, across the dotted figures of dazed animals, their brief time of flight disrupted by the glorious interception of modern science. Grubbins had got up miraculously and was carrying the huge sprayer with him. I got him, sir! That pig's mine! He released a huge gust of spray right across his vision, straight at the lone pig that was propelling himself rather smartly across the sky with his trotters. Take him down, Grubbins, take him down! Doing it, sir! The spray crashed into the pink belly of the animal just as he pulled himself over the pond. Grubbins! Tamberwell cried, horrified. Grubbins, the pond! It was too late. The spray had hit him, and down the pig went, crashing into the black waters. You idiot! Tamberwell shouted, running over to the rippling water. But... No buts, Grubbins. We're not meant to harm the animals. Strict orders from the duck. Tamberwell turned away from Grubbins's disappointed face, back to the water. The ripples had almost faded, and yet...